Welcome back to another Warframe video, and it has been a very long time since I have been uploading any videos because, well, I'm pretty busy with work. But now I do have a video for you guys, and this is for the Hildryn. Now the builds I'm about to show you are pretty much unique in a way that they can be beneficial depending on your playstyle, of course. But I do have a main build, and that is a DPS Hildryn build, which is pretty much rare because you don't really see DPS Hildryns at all. But the build I have is pretty good on Steel Path. Before we get into the builds, I want to show you my Archon Shards. So first off, in my opinion, this is the best shards you can possibly have. Starting with the casting speed at 50%. Definitely needed if you're going to be spamming the pillage, which I do recommend doing. And then you have the 30% ability strength here, which I highly recommend. So I do use a Balefire charger, and when it comes to this weapon, it is actually pretty decent. It is not the best, obviously, but it's still pretty decent to almost one-shot any trash type of enemies. So let's say the Lancers for Grenadiers. So I do have status here for gas and electricity. Definitely replace gas for something different. Definitely up to you guys, but when it comes to the mods, pretty much self-explanatory here. I do have Prime Fulmination here, which works really well, especially if you are doing fissures and if your weapon is corrupted in terms of secondary weapon. So the mods here are pretty much self-explanatory. Can definitely replace Prime Fulmination for more damage. Definitely up to you. You can definitely replace the Gunslinger for Galvanized Shot if you want. And here I have the very first build, and this is the DPS build. So remember when I said that you definitely need to have 30% ability strength? Well, the reason is because you definitely want to have at least or at most 328 ability strength. The reason being is because I am using Corrosive Projection in order to completely remove armor when I use pillage. So with Corrosive Projection, I don't need to have 400% ability strength, which is basically what you need in order to completely strip shields or armor. But with Corrosive Projection, yeah, I could just have 328% ability strength and be able to strip the armor. If you want to strip shields, you can definitely get the shield version of this aura. But with the amount of electricity damage you do, it's definitely not needed. I prefer the armor instead. I have Agility Drift here for increased evasion as well as damage reduction when I'm airborne. Now the reason I have this is because of Arcane Doubleback. I have Adaptation here for some damage resistance, Redirection for more shield capacity, more ability strength, and then of course I have range. And I have Balefire Surge for the charged shots as well as the nullifier shields. You can replace this for something different if you're not going to be using a Balefire Surge, so duration or range is definitely up to you. Even with the 45% efficiency, instead of range or duration, you can definitely get some more efficiency as well. Prime Continuity for more duration, obviously, and you gotta have at least some Umbral mods here. I have Arcane Barrier for the instant restore of shields, and now to Arcane Doubleback, which is pretty much, well, dumb. Well, you think it's dumb, but in my opinion, it's pretty good. And the reason being is because of the damage resistance. Now, armor does not apply to shields in terms of damage resistance, so you don't need armor for this build. Adaptation works really well because it does pure damage resistance, so it does not rely on armor in order to get damage resistance. Definitely good. Mandatory as well. Rolling Guard is pretty good as well, and since you will be shield gaining a lot as well as restoring your shields, Pillage is good to go here with the spamming. With the Arcane Doubleback, you will be moving a lot, and if you do, you will be able to get the 75% damage resistance. And I'm talking about pure damage resistance. So the amount of damage you take is pretty minimal, but you will still be able to take a lot of damage if you are just standing still, so make sure you keep moving. You don't need to have 75% damage resistance. 25% is good enough. 50% is really, really good. And when it comes to getting 75%, well, as long as you are dodging double jump and bullet jump, which are pretty much all three are mobility moves, you're pretty much going to be doing that anyways, so I have Arcane Doubleback here. If you do not want Arcane Doubleback, you can also put on Arcane Aegis. Although it's not that great in terms of how useful it is, it's still pretty good enough. Or if you just want to save your shields when casting, you can use Arcane Steadfast instead. Now, before you start thinking about what type of helmet ability I'm using, I just want to point out that I tried so many combinations, and the very best one I can think of in terms of survivability as well as usefulness is the Elemental Ward. With Elemental Ward and Pillage, you're pretty much going to be restoring your shields like crazy. And the status I am using for Elemental Ward is Electricity. And not just because of the shield capacity or the damage multiplier, but to restore your shields instantly if you need to. If you want to replace this ability instead, you can definitely get some Eclipse or Rhino's Roar here or any other damage boosting abilities. So this build is pretty much straightforward in terms of how to use this. You can cast Elemental Ward first or just cast Pillage and just spam that all the way. And if you notice that your shields are pretty low, just cast Elemental Ward I don't use Haven that much because it does drain the shield a lot. Now I have two other builds that are pretty unique in terms of how useful it is. It's definitely up to you to determine whether you want to get these builds or not. But the second build I have here is Air Support build. Basically, it allows you to stay in the air while shooting. So I have Balefire Surge here, as well as the mods. I have Gloom here as a subsumed ability. I have Haven here, which you can definitely use. And I have the Age of Storm. So all four of these abilities you can definitely use and be able to support your teammates. This is a more of a damage build as well as a support build. So it's a hybrid build basically. With duration at 95%, and of course efficiency at 120 and range at 100, you can pretty much tell that this is a balanced build as well as strength at 273, so I won't be using pillage at all. It's pretty dumb, but I mean, you can't really spam pillage at all with Age of Storm. Your Balefire Surge will pretty much be the one that restores your shield for you. And with Pistol Amp, you do some increased damage with Balefire Surge. With Aviator, you get some reduced damage. Prime Vigor for shield capacity, as well as more shield capacity with redirection. Prime Continuity for more duration, and then you got the ability strength mods here. Boreal's Hatred for more shield capacity as well as a bit of ability strength. And of course, reduced damage while airborne. This is like pretty much a win-win here. Fleeting Expertise for more ability efficiency. And then of course I have the Molt augments here. Now if you want to go full support and fully AFK, the third build I have here pretty much is that. I have the Empower subsumed ability here with Pillage, Haven, and Age of Storm. You can pretty much be able to use all four of these abilities. Of course, Empower, you want to use this first to buff every single ability. And then you can pretty much AFK. How this works is basically every time you take damage, Arcane Barrier will pretty much support you in terms of restoring the shields. And of course with Aerodynamic and Aviator, you'll get some reduced damage. Primed Vigor here with Redirection will pretty much give you a lot of shields. I also have Prime Continuity for duration, Energy Conversion to buff the ability strengths of the Age of Storm, Haven, and Fleeting Expertise for more ability efficiency. So the support builds are pretty much straightforward, and I don't really recommend using them that much in Steel Path unless you have a solid team. If you want to AFK, well obviously you don't want to do that in Steel Path. You're just being useless if you do. But air support, it's pretty much Steel Path friendly, and full support build is pretty much a fissure build. So if you're going to be AFKing in fissures or low level fissures, this is a pretty good build for you to use. And that is it for this video. Hopefully this video helps you a little bit on Hildryn. I do highly recommend getting a DPS build on Hildryn because it makes you a tank as well as being able to do DPS at the same time. You don't find that in many Warframes out there. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, peace out.